Everybody, I'm Bill Whittle here with my friend and colleague Alfonso Rachel. This is the Virtue Signal, the show where we talk about how society is being destroyed by the internet, brought to you on the internet. That's kind of what I want to talk about today, Zoe. This thing, I've been a big science fiction fan for pretty much all my life, and science fiction's covered pretty much everything. I remember very clearly in 2001, A Space Odyssey, which was made in 68, I think, released in 68 anyway. There's a scene where these two astronauts are sitting there and they've just got these iPads. They're just looking at, this is, years and years ahead. Video conferencing, all of this stuff, jetpacks, everything. But no one saw the internet coming. I am not aware of anybody who saw it coming before it got here. And so here we are with this new servant, like, it's pretty fair to say it's fire, It's the fire of the information age. It's George Washington said fire was a great servant, but a terrible master. And it looks like we've got both. So I thought we could just have a little chat about what the internet is doing to society. And since the world is upside down out there, why don't we start with the bad stuff? Because I think the good stuff is fairly self-evident, but we'll get to that in a second. The internet is changing people. It's changing everything. It changes the way we think. I'm not even interested so much in the censorship and stuff that we've talked about. Let's just leave that out because we've been down that road a few times, and I'm sure we will again. I'm just talking about the idea that there's this constant connectivity between people. I sometimes listen to one of these crime series on YouTube. That's all I watch is I only watch user-generated content. That's the only thing I watch. And I was just coming into work and they said, she disappeared, and her social media went silent and there was no signal from her cell phone. And I realized we're all connected all the time now. And this connectivity, strangely enough, seems to be destroying connections between people.
Man, you said something that reminded me of that. What's that meme that goes out there? Moses, the first one to actually download on a tablet. Yeah,
it's been a while since then, but and you know what? If the stuff that we were downloading now was as good as the stuff that Moses downloaded, I don't think we'd be in any trouble.
Right? And isn't it interesting though, man? When we be doing this stuff, man, it's like swipe. And when the law was written to Moses, that's how God did it. It says that the law was written to Moses by the finger of God. You know
what? Hold that thought for a second, because that's really interesting, actually, as usual, because God theoretically could have put a tablet in every single person's hands, right?
Sure.
I mean, they're just woken up the next day with a book on their lap.
Yes.
And the idea that this information was so important that it had to be transmitted by a human is kind of, I think, sort of where we're going with this. There is no humanity in the message now. Even though the message is largely, as obviously composed by humans, there seems to be a lack of human connectivity as a general rule. And when you mentioned Moses, I thought, he didn't just write it on a mountain where everybody could read it, right? He gave it to somebody who was wise enough to understand what it was and then impart that wisdom face to face, basically, is what I'm saying.
That's right, man. And and as I've said before, the law was written on both sides of the tablet. To make sure that when Moses holds up the law, it's like, okay, the law's there for you to read, but hey, Moses, these laws apply to you too. You got to see the law also. You're not above the law. So this is really important. And this right there is one of those ways that Jesus lets people know that, yeah, dude, I was the one who gave Moses the law. So everybody knows that story of, the woman caught in adultery and they bring it to Jesus. Hey, Jesus, what's up with this, man? What do you say? And Jesus starts writing on the ground with his finger. Right? It's just a little subtle thing that he lets them know. It's like, that law that you guys are bringing to me, I wrote that. So, now when they get these laws and we're talking about connectivity, Jesus is always wanting us to make the connection, right? Dude, when it talks about the gate at the tabernacle, when you break down the word gate, it means to add it up. It means to calculate. You're supposed to see who I am. I'm a Levite, man. I'm your high priest. And the word Levite itself means connect. I'm your connector. Isn't it so interesting that in these days, human connection seems to be so important, but people are trying to connect with each other on their own terms. And it's like, no, you guys are driving each other apart. I'm the guy who actually connects you. You guys are wanting representation. When I created you in my image, that's what the word breaks down to. You're wired to want representation. You're wired to want to represent because that's how I created you. It's not just in my image. I created you to represent me in nature. And people are pursuing they have these pursuits of knowledge. Everybody wants to be, so informed. It's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing to want to be informed. It's not a bad thing to want to be in the know and woke and all that sort of stuff. It's just so interesting that, the temptation was, yeah, your eyes will be opened, right? You're going to be woke. That was the selling point from Satan in the very beginning. It's just so weird how this so-called archaic book has been reading us from the beginning, right? And they leapfrogged over the tree of life. Tree of life? Yeah. That knowledge is power thing. That's what I'm sold on. I don't care what kind of knowledge. Even if it's the knowledge of evil, I want it. And when people put this premium on knowledge over life, then we get a whole bunch of problems. And we're using this internet thing to just fortify ourselves with so much knowledge and more growing colder and estranged from each other.
Well, the more knowledge that's available, the dumber people seem to be getting. It's something I've noticed. But, I've long known for forever, probably subconsciously anyways. I was always a good storyteller. I remember I wrote something for the school newspaper when I was in third grade or something about a trip to an amusement park. So I've always had a real natural affinity and ability to understand the power of story. And we learn all of our lessons through story. Every TV show, every movie we see is a story, obviously. The Bible is nothing but a series of stories. Certainly Jesus understood the power of storytelling with the Good Samaritan and the prodigal son and all the rest of it. But the one thing I didn't really think about quite so clearly until I heard you speak about it was throughout all of human history, it wasn't just that we learned from stories. It's that we learned from stories almost always in a community. That the information and the wisdom of our culture came to us through a story, but it came to us through a story that we were sharing. And if you think of cultures really right up until ours, you got a bunch of people in a room listening to somebody tell a story, and that dynamic is certainly in play when you go to the movies. I mean, it's a completely different experience seeing a movie in a movie theater than it is watching it at home on even if you've got a home theater. Mm-hmm. Completely different. And so when we were watching things as like small little groups, like a family group, when I grew up, we were all watching the same things together at the same time. We may not have been in the same physical place, but, on Thursday nights, there's 30 million people watching Friends, right? Or everybody's watching Gilligan's Island, or they're watching Hee-Haw, or whatever. It was something that was shared. Mm-hmm. And now we don't only not get the same message, we don't get anything at the same time in the same place. And this to me seems to be really rapidly destroying the bonds of humanity. And certainly I don't have to tell you that people say and do things on the internet that they would never say and do to your face, if for no other reason than the fear of, losing a tooth or something. But this interconnectivity is depriving us of the humanity of the connection. And I'm deeply worried about that because I see a lot of things out there that kind of indicate to me that the fundamental human fabric is starting to unwind.
Sure, man. It's like being deconstructed. The internet is basically our modern day Tower of Babylon, if you will. And the Lord deconstructed. He brought the whole posse. He says, let us go down and we got to stop the construction of this because, and this is the endorsement that God gives of humanity. He says, if they keep this up, there won't be anything that they can't do. That's a heavy thing for God to say. There won't be anything that they can't do. And that's not such a bad thing. Hey, the capacity that we have. But God knows also it's like, but there isn't anything that they won't do to do anything that they can't do. And they will do a lot of evil, right?
And there's the rub.
Yes. You know what I'm saying? So now this was prophesied to us, even with the prophet Daniel. But you, Daniel, shut up the words and seal the book until the time of the end. Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall increase. We got people running around all over the place, don't we? And knowledge, and there has definitely been an explosion of knowledge. Now, that does seem like it would be a normal evolution of things. It's like, of course, knowledge is going to increase, right? But this is like at a point in time, an explosion of knowledge. And, the thing is, Jesus himself being the fulfillment of all these things, because the whole book is about him. From the very beginning, it's telling you of who he is, what he's going to do, and what's going to happen to him. Jesus indeed being a great storyteller, but he doesn't just invoke stories, he calls to account. These are things that happen. Jesus didn't just suffer a brutal execution over a story. These things had to actually happen. It's like, it's like one of those things where Jesus is either the King of Kings or he's the King of coincidence. Orchestrating his own execution would be one thing. And to do that for what? I don't know. I mean, that would be pretty sick and twisted. And you couldn't really see him as a good person or a good teacher if he did something that just really had no redeeming value that caused other people to get killed, basically lying about who he said he is. And that's one thing, but to orchestrate his own birth, now that's amazing. So it's one of those things where when we're looking at storytelling, if the word itself, because I myself, who at one time was an agnostic, borderline atheist, that's what I chalked it up to also. And like I say, if it's a book of stories, then the consequences is just a story. And people are going to take liberties on how they think that the story will end for themselves as they YOLO or pursue their own destiny. Hey, it's just a story. I'm going to write the book on this concerning my life and what consequences I will answer to. And we have a world that's steeped in that. And like I say, there has to be a judgment for these things. We can't use the excuse. And I know your point. Your point is basically the effect, the power of storytelling. That's what we're getting down to.
And the internet, how the internet is destroying most of that.
That's right.
Positive aspects of that.
But we got to be. But I'm just clarifying for our audience, because when we kind of take on these things, this idea. At the same time, we know that in this story, in every good story, even if it's the stage of the human story, there has to be an account for these things. There has to be justice. There has to be closure. There has to be a closing scene. Who is the director who calls cut? Who is the one qualified to say, okay, that's a wrap. This is how it's done. It's like, who died and made you director, right? The Lord says, look, man, these are my qualifications. I came and I bled for this qualification. Here's my writ of qualifications of who I am, who's qualified to judge, and who is qualified to close this scene and say, that's a wrap. If we just say that this is a story that anybody can just write, then there will never be an actual judgment. There will never be a close to this. And it will end. The curtain call itself will just be a curtain call of a burning curtain coming down on us that will just never go out. We don't want that. So in this story, man, I leave it. I try not to step away from the script of the actual story writer. And we have our choice on how we're going to answer to it and how we're going to play our role, but there has to be a qualified director in it.
What do we do about this human disconnect? How do we solve this problem? The whole experience of just surfing the net is an extremely, by definition, is a solitary experience because somebody's clicking the link to whatever the next thing is. I mean, especially now with this COVID shutting down movie theaters and stuff, these last vestiges are just falling away. And by the way, the people that are trying their very best to change society into very inhuman forms really, 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 really don't like us getting together face to face. In fact, I'm utterly convinced, without any shadow of a doubt, that because of the scientific contradictions and just the sheer silliness of the mask mandate, that the greater part of it is that they're trying to enforce this human anonymity upon us, that they're taking away our ability to make expressions and read expressions. They're essentially just wiping our faces off. And they very much want us to live our life online. I saw the reptile Zuckerberg in this fantasy house, and he's it's terrifying. He's like, it's this virtual house. He says, imagine coming home to a beautiful place like this every day, where you've got this incredible view out the window, and you've got all this other stuff, and essentially what he's saying is, you may live in a hovel and stuff, but if you sign up for all this stuff, when you come home, you live in a palace. And now we're getting to the end game of where this thing is going. And that is a world where the virtual experience so far surpasses the real experience that essentially people, even if they go to work anymore, it's just so they can come home, close the doors, disappear into the internet. And of all the things I see out there, I think the thing that really concerns me the most are things like going to like a Major League Baseball game and seeing people in front of me with box seats right on the infield there, and the two parents watching the game and the four kids are just looking down at the phone. I've seen videos of people going through the Grand Canyon, all they're doing is videotaping it. There's something really wrong here, and where it's heading inexorably is a world where everybody can be controlled, because if your experience is an online virtual experience, then the technical monkeys that run that technology can do whatever they want to. We see this already with things like the censorship of the news and all this other stuff that they're trying to get away with. But imagine if this thing really does continue to go the way it's going, they will then simply determine your actual reality, your day-to-day reality. And I think that's not a future we really want to get into.
Heck no, man. They trying to turn us into a lawnmower man culture, man. Remember that movie Lawnmower Man? Or The Matrix, I guess, for so many people, disillusioned with reality. They want to make a reality, I guess, that they can control, and a reality where they can do like all these things and stuff like that as we're alone together, if you will. That's
right. Alone together.
Yeah. It's what an oxymoron that is. Right. But, it's almost like, the generation that really got into like trying to lucid dream, you know what I'm saying? Like have that lucid dream where you can control your dreams and stuff like that. Cause heck, man, being asleep and dreaming, is way better than this reality that we have to face. If you could just spend, 8 hours a day, just dreaming about whatever you want, how fantastic. Well, now we've got the technology. We're, on the precipice of this technology where you could just jack in, man, and you can live whatever reality that you want. And heck, maybe even at some point, facilitate your own so-called immortality, which, I think is kind of like a knuckleheaded pursuit, man, because it's what I call it, the trip over the plug syndrome. It's like somebody's got to monitor that plug, or if not, that so-called eternal virtual reality life is going to end up being cut short. And, but it's a lot of it though, Bill, is people just feeling so empty and so unfulfilled. As we
isolated, we become more isolated every day.
Yeah, we're becoming more estranged from each other as we put the burden of wanting to be fulfilled by each other. You got these policies of people that want to demand that this is what you're going to have to do to live as a better society. You have to conform to these ideas that we have. And you got people out there who are sold on it. And the more they try to pay into it, the more empty that they feel. And they don't seem to make the connection, no matter how much they surf online and try to, find whatever it is that they're looking for. All these messages. It's like, like we talked about before, you got all these people trying to put out their message of love wins and what you're supposed to do to be a good person, love the environment and all that sort of stuff. And all this messaging is so powerful, Bill. We're in the age of messaging. And just the irony of it is, man, it's like, is this coincidence? Once again, is this coincidence? The first job given to sentient beings was messaging. That's what angel means. The Hamalakim, if you want to call it in the Hebrew, messenger, right? Deputies of God, the ones who bring the message on behalf of God to say, this is what this is. They were created to witness God lay the foundations of the universe so they could say, yeah, dude, we were there. We watched it. We saw the whole thing. Heralds. And see, God has a serious issue. He has huge issues when people get away from the message. Just like it says with the angels, those who stepped away from their first estate, their station was truth. Those who stepped away from truth, God's like, yeah, I got a special place reserved from you. You go out there and you twist up my message, any message. I got problems with you. So we're in that day today where people are using messages. The word says life and death is in the power of the tongue. People are destroying each other. They're destroying societies. They're destroying businesses. They're destroying relationships with their message, thinking that they're doing a good thing. And this is what this wonderful tool, that's what we're using it for. I was like, come on, you know.
As a comedian got to the heart of what I'm trying to get at with this human connection thing. He said, if I'd been born 20 years ago and my best friend, called me on the phone and said my uncle died, and I'd have to listen to him talk for an hour. But now I can just unfriend him, and so there you go. You get out of the good aspects of human connection, and you also get out of the bad aspects, or at least the difficult ones. That's a better word, the difficult ones. I remember the guy I worked for in the planetarium, Jack Horkheimer, was very sick. He was generally very sick. And he had a good friend named Art Smith. And Art Smith came and stayed with him at the hospital. And he said, Jack said, Art, you don't have to be here. I know, you don't have to be here with me all the time. He said, yeah, I know that, Jack. That's what friends do. Friends are places and doing things when they don't have to do it. That's the definition of what friendship is. And that bond goes on and on and on. I don't see any evidence of that out there today with younger people. I don't see 4:00 in the morning friends. I don't see, that doesn't mean it's not there. I'm just saying I don't see it. So I want to be crystal clear on this too. I see people with lots and lots and lots of followers and likes and so on. But when I say 4:00 in the morning, friends, there are people I know, and you're one of them, that could call me at 3 or 4 in the morning and say, "Hey, man, I'm halfway between here and Las Vegas, and my car just completely crapped out. And can you come and get me?" And I said, "Yeah, okay." And hang up the phone and got a Zoe, can't take it. But I'd get in the car and I'd go, and that depth seems to be lacking, and you can actually extrapolate that the other way too. So I grew up in an era when we didn't have the internet, so I had real friends. I didn't have a lot of them. I didn't want a lot of them. I had good friends, and that's one of the reasons I survived, was good, close friends. Now I don't see that, but you could actually work that backwards to my dad's generation, where they weren't just friends, they were friends in foxholes, and those bonds are closer than anything I can imagine. So as the world becomes more and more comfortable, we become less and less human. And I understand that this is built into the fabric of humans, that this is one of those great fault lines in the human heart. But I also think there should be something we can do about it. And I don't know exactly what it is, and maybe people in the comment section can get to it. But what's interesting is it's not really the technology that's the problem, because originally, and when I say originally, I mean 7, 8 years ago, Facebook was a place where you could get in touch with the cousin you hadn't seen in forever. And you could look up high school friends you hadn't seen. And there was no algorithms, and there was no filtering, and there was no $100 million of political messaging, and there was no excluding topics, and there was no, you can't talk to this guy because we don't like what he's saying. And the same thing for YouTube. YouTube used to be a giant warehouse that you could put stuff up on and then send a link to somebody else. They could watch it. Now, the humans that are in charge of both of these platforms have, through this need, this obsessive need to be gods, determined who and what we see, who and what we can talk to, and all the rest of it. And since that human connection face-to-face is not there anymore, we are subjected to tremendous psychological pressures that would not only not have existed if there hadn't been an internet, but wouldn't exist today even if this poisonous new internet were still here, as long as we still had those family conversations. But we don't have those either now.
Man, I tell you what, man, it's I just off the top of my head, I saw this picture. I was kind of like doing some research on like, what minimum wage jobs like look like, today, or, and what kind of Gen Z jobs are out there. And I went to this website, and that's kind of, a hub for this sort of stuff. And the picture that I saw was just so telling. It just had a line of Generation Z folk just standing, smiling. They look all happy, and the picture's all colorful and stuff like that. But every one of them is looking at their phone. Yep. And now I guess this picture is supposed to be maybe like inviting or whatnot, because it's supposed to be like a point of looking for jobs. What kind of jobs are out there? And this is the picture that they use. I mean, heck, man, when we were growing up back in our day, if you saw pictures like that and there were like some people of our generation standing around, they're like looking at each other, or like looking at, like smiling and laughing. They have this connection with each other. Now they're just looking at their phone. And the funny thing is that they might actually be standing next to the person that they're having the conversation with. It's that kind of thing, that we're doing, man. And, it's one of those things that it doesn't surprise me. We got to live with it, which kind of sucks, but it's not one of those things that surprises me. I'm not caught off guard by these kind of things. Like when you're talking about like friends and, like even for myself, as introverted as I am, and I don't have a broad social circle, but, I look at even what's happened like with my brand. It's bad enough, with all the shadow banning and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But it's like where are the people who were your friends? These like-minded or friends in the cause. Man, I got friends who treat me like a closet friend. I don't want to post any pictures. If there's any pictures with me, can you scrub me out of them, or can you not post pictures because I don't want to be outed, right? Or, I see pictures of these same people. They'll post them with the big political celebrities, or commentators and mainstream commentators and stuff like that. That they got a picture with them and stuff like that, but they don't want pictures of them with me because they don't want to be outed. And I'm like, if you're worried about being outed, why do you have pictures of yourself with this person? It's not that you're worried about being outed by me. You just don't want to be seen with me, And I've had people send me emails. I don't want, like even trying to promote some stuff. Like here, you got a project that you're working on. Hey, man, we'll do a picture and I'll put it up and so that. No, because I don't want my political leanings. Oh, so you don't want me to help you promote your project? You want me to be a part of your project, but you don't want to help me.
There is a response for people like that, but we can't mention it on this show.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, that connection, that fear of even friendship, if that's what we call it. Yeah. That kind of stuff, it really exists. And it's really sad to have those kind of things, even in, and just one more thought, even in our ranks. But what's the answer to that? What is the answer to that? There is an answer. It was written to us a long time ago. It's the manual of how we're supposed to do these things. It even says things like, do unto others, as you would have them do unto you. And it tells you, because now you got some people out there who will do unto others would have them, and there's some really kinky stuff. So it's like, look, actually don't do that to me, bro. Maybe you like that stuff done to you, but don't do that to me. There has to be a standard of what to build that on. And, loving your neighbor as you would love yourself. Actually, what it takes to be a friend, not just...
You don't know your neighbor anymore, Zoe.
Exactly.
That's my entire point. You have no idea who's on the other side of that wall if you're in an apartment complex.
Yes. And the word gives us discernment about, it doesn't tell you that you have to accept everything that everybody does. And see, that's another thing, Bill. We're in this culture where real love is accepting everybody. You have to accept everything that they're doing. While these people who preach that don't accept what other people do while they're talking about tolerance. It's total hypocrisy. Trying to, yank the splinter out of somebody else's eye while they're ignoring that plank in theirs. So we have a whole culture of that. And once again, I would subscribe. The thing that keeps this stuff from being a big surprise to me is reading that that book.
Well, I'll just close with this. That example you used, I imagine what they were trying to do with that photograph was to recreate the job lines of the old, especially during the Depression, where you'd have a line of men, a mile long, half a mile long, 6 blocks stretching out, men, just desperate men in line waiting to get a job. And I guess what they're trying to say is, hey, we don't have to wait in line anymore to get a job. Now we can get a job online. But this actually completely makes my point, because everybody's looking for a job by themselves now. But if you're standing in that line in the 30s, right, and you're waiting for 4 or 5 hours to see if you can get a job, and you don't have the ability to disappear and start playing Candy Crush on your mobile device, then what those guys in the lines did was they started talking to each other. And when the guy in front of you for the next 2 hours and the guy behind you for the next 2 hours are telling you their stories, and their stories of their own hardship match or exceed yours, you get something out of that. You look at that line and you just think, wow, okay, big long line. It must be completely silent. I have no doubt whatsoever that the men in those lines were sharing stories of and making connections and releasing all of this stuff. I'm sure in a number of cases they started either friendships or decided to help each other. But there was something human going on there. At the very, 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 very least, even if there was no conversation at all, you could look around you and see there are real people here like me in a lot of trouble. And we are social creatures. And social media is destroying the social bonds that make us human. And the only thing we can do about it is be aware of it and try to turn up the volume on the face-to-face side and get as much of that in there as we possibly can. That'll do it for this edition of the Virtue Signal, made possible by the members at BillWhittle.com, who many of whom I've met on the road and who universally turn out to be just the best people ever. So if you're a miserable, rotten, horrible person and you'd like to be a really terrific, great, wonderful person, you can go right over to BillWhittle.com, either hit the become a member button, or you can make a one-time donation, and like that, magically, your entire self-worth will just spin on a dime. It's absolutely astonishing. Offer not good in California or New Jersey. Your results may vary. Anyway, that'll do it for this edition of the Virtue Signal. We'll see you next week right here for Bill Whittle and Alfonso. Rachel, thanks for joining us.